Hey, this is Matt. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this interview between Sunshine and myself. I ask her a few questions, and she asks me a few questions, things that she's interested in. Sunshine is just about to wrap up 12 months at our job readiness program at Purple Door, and she's knocked it out of the park, investing in her own life and her own future and the changes that she desires for her own life. And we're just so proud of her. I really, my favorite responses are her responses and some of our conversation towards the end. This is definitely a low quality recording, so thanks for your patience. We used a voice recorder and whatever this software is on my laptop. Thanks for being interested and giving this the time. I also want to say thanks for all the ways that you guys support Dry Bones. I hope you find some inspiration in this conversation. I was trying to decide between asking how long have you been connected with Dry Bones, but I think a better first question is, how did you first get involved with Dry Bones?
My mom introduced me to you guys. I was in jail fighting a drug charge, and when I got out, she's like, "You really have to meet these people." And I'm like, "Okay." So we went to one of your picnics, I think, and it was on 18th, where all those like blocks of water were like,
Yeah, Skyline Park.
yeah, we were there, and I met you guys, and I met Reb and you, and then I forget the other guy's name, but
Maybe Zach.
maybe he kind of looked like you.
Yeah, that's Zach.
He's your brother.
Everybody used to call
Your
me
brother.
Zach and him Matt and get us confused, and he's still
Yeah.
one of my best friends.
Yeah, and so then after that, I used to see you guys come through the park, Civic Center Park, and just be with people in their mess, and that's kind of how I like observed you guys for a while, and then decided that I liked you guys better than the other people that came.
Oh, really?
There's like multiple other organizations, church
Outreach,
groups, yeah,
church groups.
that would come down, but they didn't actually spend time with people.
Huh.
They would just be like, "Here's a bunch of Wendy's cheeseburgers, you want one?" And then they just go about their day. But you guys actually sat there with people and prayed with people and asked them about their lives and how they could help them and stuff like that. And so,
How old were you then?
I was 18, 19.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Were you living outside at that time, or were you?
Yes. I was homeless. I was selling drugs to survive. I was partying a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was homeless. How long have you been connected to Dry Bones?
You know, it was about this time, 23 years ago, that I first got the invitation to join Jeff Metters. And it's a whole long story. But Jeff and I moved here in at the end of October in 2001. So it's been 23 years. It's like this unfolding story, you know, that nobody could have written themselves. I didn't like set out my goals and dreams to start a nonprofit or to work in a nonprofit for 2 decades or to work with unhoused young people. That was never like, I was 23 too. And so it was just this unfolding story that began 23 years ago. What is the first thing you want people to know about you when they meet you?
Initially, like, I want to be known as somebody who loves you unconditionally. Like, I've learned that saying how it says, "Don't hate the sinner, hate the sin." And that's kind of how I look at people. Like, no matter how much bad things you have done, like that, I know that's not you.
Yeah.
It's just what was created out of circumstance, you know? So just that people feel loved and accepted and that they can be their true self.
How have you learned to live as your true self?
Well, I had to understand that my biggest fear of embarrassment caused me to distance myself from relationship with people. So when I understood that fear of embarrassment and kind of worked through that, I was able to let go of what everyone else thought about me and not dwell on that. Like, they could think whatever they want. I know who I am. So once I got over that fear of embarrassment and just accepted me, who I am, what I look like, it just kind of came naturally after that.
Yeah, no doubt. It's like once you, what you just said is truly, I believe this is something I was practicing this morning. I have this practice where I go through this process of saying, I know who I am in truth. I know who I am.
Yeah.
And I sit and I just like receive that and accept that and settle into that. I think if we know who we are, we know what we are, we know how we serve from that place of being, of our true self.
Yeah.
It grounds us into authenticity and into God, really.
Mm-hmm. And like the funny thing, this weekend I was working and my body was starting to hurt. And like we were cutting bread and I was like totally screwing up this bread. Like they want it very thin and it was like breaking and it wasn't coming into slices. So I was like, I asked the chef, I was like, can you show me a better way to do this? And so he showed me, and like you have to basically put no pressure on the bread knife to cut it. So like as I was cutting, I was like, no pressure, no pressure. And then it turned into, you're a rock star, you're a rock star. And then it was like, your body's not in pain. So I was like telling myself this stuff while I was cutting bread to kind of like remind myself, like, you got this, you have the skills, don't freak out. Like, it's okay if you messed up a couple, you know. But it was like a little mantra when I was cutting the bread, like, you're a rock star. I was like, I wonder if anybody else does this.
That's brilliant, actually. Yeah. I mean, it really is. Like, every moment a prayer, every moment a meditation, every moment a remembering who we are.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
And it actually made me feel a little bit better for a second, for like 2 hours, and then I was like...
For a second, for like 2 hours.
And then I was like, oh, my body hurts.
That's a big deal, though. Yeah. I mean, to feel better for 2 hours while you're doing a hard job, it worked.
Yeah.
And you'll do it a little differently next time.
Yeah.
And it will work even longer.
Yeah.
That's cool. Wow.
In those 23 years... what has kept you connected or continuing on this path?
You know, Sunshine, that's one of those questions that sometimes I don't even know the answer to. But what I can say is, and I don't use these terms lightly, but it's a sense of calling. It's a sense of like, I'm supposed to be here. And it's kind of an effortless calling as far as for 23 years, the funds that we've needed to survive and pay our bills. And I'm not just talking about Dry Bones and Purple Doors bills, but my own family's bills and rent and car and gas and food and medical bills. All that stuff has just been provided. And so there's just this trust that I attempt to practice to stay in that flow of being in this unfolding story that we call Dry Bones. And so that there's so many obvious kind of signs of like, this is where you're supposed to be, that there's not really much of a question of, am I supposed to be somewhere else? But I also think on a practical level, doing this for 23 years, it's really challenging work. Like, it's really challenging service. It's really a challenging life in so many ways. Like, you included, we're exposed to secondary trauma, people around us, other people's trauma, and that really gets into your spirit, into your psyche, into your life, you know. And so I've had to learn how to create boundaries. I've had to learn how to not answer my phone every time it rings. I've had to learn to say no. I've had to learn that what is mine to do, that question is really important to me. What is mine to do and what's not mine to do? Like, what is within the realm of my ability to serve and what's not within the realm of my ability to serve in this moment. And I think a lot of my friends on the streets sometimes don't understand that, because maybe they go to this agency over here and they say, I need this, this, and this. And that agency goes, oh, well, that's what we provide, that, and that. And they just start solving these problems very quickly. Well, you've already described in one of your responses this idea of connection, relationship, belonging, love. That doesn't have some sort of systematized set of answers. And so learning how to be in the flow of the moment and going, I can't solve that problem for you. I'm here with you. I'm next to you, or I'm alongside you. I don't know what the answer to this big question is, this big reality is.
Yeah.
I don't know how to get you out of prison sooner. I don't know how to heal your abscess. I don't know how to heal the wounds that you have from your father. I'm not talking to you specifically, just in general. It's like all these things. I don't know how to grieve other than to grieve alongside you when we bury one of our friends, And so knowing what I can and can't be a part of and do, and leaning into my intuition, leaning into the Spirit of God, to know what I can and can't do, really alleviates that savior mentality, because I think when I was 23 years old, I had more of a savior mentality.
Yeah.
And so to do this for all these years, you just have to learn how to get out of that savior mentality and get more into this flow. And then creating healthy boundaries between relationships, and learning how to take care of myself and my family, and prioritizing that when I need to, taking a mental health day or taking a time off. And took my kids backpacking in the mountains a few weeks ago, and just getting away from the city and things like that really sustained me. Where do you find and experience a deep sense of comfort, safety, and security?
Well, I think when I'm sitting in the middle of church and we're worshiping, that's where I find that just like overwhelming, And then I feel that here as well, like
Where?
when Purple Door Roaster, when we have OSV and everyone, it's very genuine. Like we ask, like, how are you feeling today? Like, how'd your night go? And then we ask an icebreaker question, and even just having like little conversations with the other participants throughout the day, and seeing them open up and share with me very tender things for them. I think it helps me feel that safety and security as well, because I also have shared my story here like 3 or 4 times now, and I wouldn't have done that anywhere else. So I think church for one, and then here, and oddly enough, I don't feel that at home. But that's because we don't have like sit down and have intentional conversations.
Well, it sounds like you're experiencing some mutual vulnerability. Like if others will open up and be honest, it gives you that safe space to open up and be honest yourself and vulnerable, whether it's with your story or just in the moment. Where do you find, feel, experience the greatest freedom in this world? Like that deep sense of freedom.
With children, and also in the kitchen. Yeah, when like I was in high school and I was going to like a technical college thing while I was in high school, every time I put that chef jacket on and went into the kitchen, I felt like Superman. Like I could just complete any task that they wanted me to, and they would always challenge me to. So that was cool. But I feel like when I put that chef jacket on, it's just like a whole nother universe. Wow. So that's why I like love this Airmark job, but at the same time, like the circumstances are not what I wish it would be. But so it's kind of hard.
I hear that. Can you tell me about any ways that the staff of Dry Bones programs, the community of Dry Bones have had an impact in your life?
Yes. I really got connected with Reb when we were downtown, and kind of like the things I was saying before, like she would ask you about your day and she would ask to pray with you, and she was very genuine. And even throughout my pregnancy and after I had my son, she was like really involved in my life. And if I needed somebody to talk to, she'd be like, just call me. So I think that made a super impact on my life, because it showed me that somebody cared and they weren't my family. And at that point, it showed me like you create your own family. You don't have to be connected to the family you were born into.
Yeah.
And so I was very thankful for her and just the relationship she showed me that was possible, because I didn't know what a good relationship was back then. I mean, I thought I did, but it was not. It was very warped understanding of what relationship was. And then also Cassie, when I got here.
To Purple Door.
Yes, to Purple Door. She was very vulnerable with her life, and we found out we had a lot of similarities, and it was very easy to open up to her about a lot of things that were very deep hurt traumas, and I appreciated that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, both Reb and Cassie are very special humans, right?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. What is a fear that you have?
How dare you ask that question?
Why?
No, I'm just kidding. Well, I will say my whole life has been, just like every American's life and most humans' life, has been filled with fears. Fears that were taught to me when I was young, fears that were programmed and ingrained in me, not intentionally or spitefully, but just the way our society works and the way that our culture exists. And so my path for the last, I would say, 3 years has been to face fears and to dissolve fear into love and be led by love and not fear. That doesn't mean that I've accomplished that yet. And so the answer to your question is the fears that I have today, it is August 21st, 2024, is I fear, it is crazy, 23 years of fundraising and being provided for, like I've already said, but I fear financial things right now. I fear the economy sometimes. I fear, will donors stop donating to us? The more divided our nation has become, it seems like donors are dividing as well. I was at a conference last week where somebody said the days of Christian people and churches supporting your nonprofit ministries are over. And that scared me. And I was like, I experienced that some. Like, we have such generous supporters and donors, but we are still behind on budget right now. And our donations are down this year compared to years past. And that it creates a fear in me of like, oh, are we doing something wrong? Or what's happening? What am I supposed to be paying attention to? And that's when I have to like dissolve that into love. And that's what I'm trying to do today on August 21st, 2024, is like dissolve that fear back into love and get back into the flow and trust and just keep moving forward. But those are my biggest fears right now, are typically financial stuff. What's the first memory that comes to mind when I ask you for a happy memory from your childhood?
I think when I was 10, we lived in Brighton. And at this moment in our lives, we were financially stable. My dad had his own carpet company, and we were able to do things that we weren't normally able to do. So he let us go to the skating rink every Friday. And so we would spend from like 8 to midnight at the skating rink. And we would drink Suicides, which is like all the flavors of soda.
Oh, I know, yeah.
And we would just skate, and my sister would do her thing, and I would do my thing, and then my dad would pick us up afterwards.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful memory.
Yeah.
If you could add one thing or create something new within this thing called Dry Bones, what would you create? What would you add? What would you innovate around here?
I mean, if I had an unlimited amount of money,
Sure.
I would definitely create an apartment space for the participants of Purple Door.
Mm.
Because I feel like it's easy to do the work while you're here, but once you leave out that door and you're back into the survival mode of living on the streets, it's hard to remember the skills and practice the skills that we learn here. So I feel like if we had a space where it would almost be like transitional housing to teach them like budgeting and renting and paying rent and all that stuff, and it would be good to continue to live in that community together. So if I had like a limited amount of money, that's what I would do.
Do you think you could handle living with other program participants? Like, because sometimes it's stressful working alongside each other.
Definitely. That's a good question. I mean, in the long run, I would have to say yes, because the hard work happens when you do stuff consistently. And
consistency is so important, isn't
yes.
it?
Mm-hmm. So even though it would be frustrating, because like even here now when we have circumstances that happen, like I love that the people that are involved in those things continue to come back. Because a lot of the times when situations happen where it's like blow up and everyone's ready to fight, a lot of people just leave and they run and they never come back. So I appreciate that about this group, because it shows the relation, like they really want to do the hard work and they keep showing up. So that says a lot. But it would be difficult, but worth it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's difficult, but and anything that is worth it has challenge and is there's tension. Tension moves us in new directions and creates new possibilities.
Yeah. And it only like helps you develop those skills that we're learning here, like communication skills, anger management, stress management, learning how to be an adult. Like, even though they're intense situations, it helps you practice that lifestyle. And it just made me think of now, like, living in prison with a lot of people you don't like, but you're, like, forced to live with those people. I mean, it sucked, but at the end of the day, you still made relationship with people that are still my best friends to this day, you know?
Yeah, because you push through the storm of the relationship and nobody wants to be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, you have a lot of wisdom and a lot of experience in a short life. You're young.
Yeah.
You know, you have a lot of experience that you'll continue to learn from like the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. Like you have so much, those little seeds of the wisdom that you gleaned while you were in prison or on the streets or growing up with a challenging family environment or whatever, those just continue to grow and become as you continue to get older. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And I wish that my family would have intentional conversations like this.
Do you think it's important that Purple Door and Dry Bones continue into the future, and why?
I'm going to say yes.
I knew you would. Set up.
But why? I feel like this day and age, with all the technology and all of the crazy stuff that's happening in the world, what I see Dry Bones and Purple Door, what they have is connectedness, relational connectedness, where you see people, you create that space that feels safe, that feels genuine, that feels they're able to be themselves. And that's all anyone ever wishes for their life, is to be seen, to be heard, and to feel loved. And I think that those two places of Purple Door and Dry Bones, that's what embodies those two places. And even though there may be fights that break out or community disruptions amongst the people, I mean, that happens in every community, but they're connected. Because if they weren't, they wouldn't fight. You know? They wouldn't have those issues. They wouldn't have hard situations that they have to deal with. But I think that a lot of the people that are involved feel those three things. And so I think that's the heartbeat of both of them. So I would say yes. Okay, one last question. You have 3 boys. What is one thing, or maybe 3 things, because they're all different, that you would, maybe like piece of advice, or what you would want to leave them, type of like, I don't really know how to word it, but being their dad, what is one thing you hope they receive from you?
That is a huge question. That's a really big question and a really important question. You know, Nikki and I tried to start a family for several years, and it took a while to do that. And it had its own challenges that shaped us and formed us and made us, you know, and I'm grateful for those challenges now in hindsight. But even as I was becoming a dad for the first time, I was terrified. And I thought, my life is about to really be changed. And I like my life now. I like my self-centered, like, do whatever I want with my free time sort of experience. And so I was really wanting these amazing kids and terrified of becoming a parent. And hands down, being a dad is like the greatest blessing I've ever experienced in my life. It's my favorite thing I've ever been a part of. And so if I was trying to narrow it down to like one thing I want to instill in my kids or leave with my kids, I'm not even sure I can answer that. And I don't have a long list of things that I'm trying to check off as I go down, but I want my kids to be honest, to have integrity. I want my kids to love others. I want my kids to see the world the way God sees the world. I want my kids to have a depth in their spiritual life. I want them to seek God as God seeks depth in them and sees depth in them and is connected with them. I want them to reciprocate that connection with God and to seek God. I want my kids to treat others with kindness and love and inclusion and acceptance. And so I want them to believe in themselves and believe in their beauty and I just see them as like 3 of the most incredible humans on planet Earth, and I want them to see that as well. You know, so I could go on and on and on and on of my hopes for my kids, but I think more than anything, I want them to know that I love them and that I fully accept them, and there's nothing in this world they'll ever do that will cause me to love them any less. And really kind of stereotypical things that parents say, but now all of a sudden I'm realizing how true these things are. And so I long for them to suffer just enough, as much as they need to learn, and experience tension in their life just as much as they need to learn what they need to learn. And then I long for them to to thrive and find joy and serve the world in their unique ways. Because you're right, they are all three very different, and they're going to serve the world in three different ways. Yeah. And I don't want to put pressure on them. If they're not serving the world, I don't have some sort of bar that I need them to reach either. So, like I say, I could go on and on about my boys. You push that button, I'll just keep talking.
As you were talking, it just kind of like, I had a visual in my brain, like that's how God is with us.
I hope so.
And I think
I agree with you.
That also the community of Dry Bones feels that from you as well. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel that too. I always say this, Dry Bones is the most beautiful community I've ever been a part of. Mm-hmm. Like in so many ways, aren't we super dysfunctional? And like we make some all big mistakes and all, but it's the most beautiful community I've ever been a part of because there is true unconditional love here. There is deep belonging here.
Yeah.
And we see worth and value in each other. And it's not a one-way street where the Dry Bones staff will now go save the unhoused young people of Denver. But instead, it's like, let's show up at Civic Center Park and let's all of our lives be impacted and changed. And I can say without a doubt your life has impacted mine, Sunshine. And I hope you know how much I'm gracious for the service you have put into my life. You wrote so many letters that were just like sunshining lights that I would get in the mail that just encouraged me, and just watching and witnessing your life inspires me. Talk about keeping going for another 23 years. I don't know if I got another 23 years in me, but like witnessing your life and so many others' lives and being a part of a real friendship, it's worth everything to me, and it keeps me going. So yeah. Thank you for your friendship and your service to me.